is cool, just lie here on the floor. Cold towels, my feet against the door. How long have I been in this space? Arms over eyes, help me retrace. How did I become the doormat here? Memories spinning around my head seem pretty cavalier. Little by little you take control. It's a little uncivil how your game's emotional. And I don't even notice that I'm playing your game. Do you leave me alone and thinking I'm the one to blame?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of People Who Inspire. As I do every weekend, I try to get inspirational young leaders from across the world whose works I deem as very motivational and people with a vision to change our lives for the better. So today, I'm really privileged and honored to have Ope in our midst. She's the co-founder and also the CEO of Kibo. Today, we are going to learn all about Kibo, but more importantly, we are going to see how we can break the barriers to education in Africa and how we can prepare the next generation of Africa's workforce to address the challenges of the future. So, Ope, welcome to People Who Inspire. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. It's really great to be here. I'm doing really well.
Awesome. And I hope your weekend is going well as well.
It's been a really fun weekend. We are interviewing students for Kibo's founding class. So I've been really inspired hearing their stories.
Amazing. And we'll get to know a bit more about Kibo. But what I try to tell my audience every weekend is that the journey of success for me is more intriguing than the destination. You know, a lot of times we have platforms or we create platforms for people whom we deem to have arrived in life. But this platform is really looking at people who are on the journey and people whose vision, I believe, have the propensity to change or revolutionize the way we live and the way we do business. So before we get into what you do, can you tell us a bit about yourself, how you grew up or where you were born? Do you have any siblings? And maybe just walk us through, let's say, the key milestones up until now. And then, just share a bit about who you are.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Ope, as you all know. I am Nigerian by birth, born in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm a classic oldest child, if you ask my two siblings. So I have a younger brother and a younger sister. And I was the one that was the second mom and still am to them, but they're two of my closest friends, like very, very dear to me. We were all born in Lagos in Nigeria. Some of the milestones that I remember, one is when I was quite young, I went to boarding school. So at the age of 7, went to a
Wow.
boarding school, yes, in Nigeria, and it was very formative. As I think it taught me a lot of independence, being away from home, like being away from Lagos. It was in another state in Nigeria, being away from your parents. Some really funny stuff happens in boarding school. You really have to learn to fend for yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody in the audience has been to a boarding school, but wow, can be a bit wild. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was like a big part of my journey, was just the experience of being in that boarding school. And then when I was about 11, our family moved to the United States, and that was huge because I'd never
Wow.
really been around Americans. I'd never been around like white people. It just everything about it was surprising. We moved to Florida, so a very suburban, just very different from Lagos place.
Definitely.
Yeah, like just really, really worlds apart. Um, so that was huge. And when you're young, especially at that age where your identity is being formed, coming with like Nigerian identity and then meeting all these Americans, and I think especially when you're a young girl, right? Like so much of like 11 to 14. So there's so many things happening. So merging those two identities was really, yeah, that it was tough for sure. And then I think, the next really big milestone that I remembered was in high school, really becoming interested more, maybe like academically in Nigeria, and kind of that question of like,
Okay.
why is Nigeria poor? Because to be honest with you, Prince, like I did not, when I got to the States, I felt like my classmates in Nigeria were smarter. I don't know.
Oh,
I
really?
really did. I mean, that sounds funny, but I was like, these people are not smarter than we are. So I didn't get it. It's just like, but why is there so much here? Why was there so little back home? I don't know if you've experienced
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Because when you see that kind of contrast, you think, oh, there has to be an explanation, right? And
Yes.
I just became obsessed with that question. I started reading like a lot of newspaper. I got really into economics, actually. I decided that I was going to become an economist. Um,
Oh, really?
I did. And I don't know, some of your viewers may, depending on your age, do you remember like right around the 2000, like the millennia, there were these Millennium Development Goals.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and
The
that was a big,
MDGs.
big deal, like the MDGs. I was obsessed with them. Like I was in secondary school when they first came out. I read a lot about it. I was like, we're gonna end poverty. That is so cool. Like we can do it in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so it's like, isn't it wild? It's wild, first of all, that was 22 years ago. Makes me feel very old, but it was life changing, right? So that inspired me to like go to university. I studied economics and math. I was kind of on this path towards becoming an economist because I really felt like that was how we would end poverty. And I was very focused on like ending poverty in Nigeria and giving people the opportunities I had when I moved to the States. Um, and then, that was kind of the path that I was on. And when I was in university, I was in New York. I was studying at New York University. I was also a math tutor because,
Okay.
knowing math is valuable in this world. Too many people have math anxiety. So that's how I got through university. You're smiling. I don't know if you're one of those people who've had math anxiety.
Well, I've known people,
Yeah.
back in, yeah, growing up. Yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody can do math and everyone can do math at a high level. And so if you're somebody who has math anxiety, it's not your fault. It is the education system, unfortunately. Um, ingrains in a lot of people. You're not a math person, and I hate hearing that. But anyway, to get back to the story, I started tutoring, and a few like really interesting tools came around like right after I left university. One was like Khan Academy in 2008, where I don't know if you've seen Khan Academy, but When it,
Yes, Khan
yeah,
Academy, yes,
it's
yes.
so big now, but when it started back in 2008, it was just like some videos of a few math lessons. And that really piqued my interest. Like, oh, we can use the internet to teach people everywhere, not just in the States, but all over the world. And I kind of got that's like one of the things that really flipped my interest to education. And ever since then, I've been on a path towards like, how do we use education and technology together to um, really like give people the tools to change their own lives, and decided against the economics thing, and really veered towards ed tech. So let me stop there, but that's a little bit of my journey and some of the moments.
I love the story because I can so much relate with a lot of the things you have said. So I mean, I consider when I first moved to work, outside of Ghana, this I had the same kind of reaction. I was like, okay, so people here are not necessarily smarter than us. It's really surprising, I mean, having grown up in Ghana my entire life, the whole assumption was that the people overseas or abroad were maybe smarter than us, but it's not really the case. And I look at your story and I'm thinking, you started out, okay, I want to be an economist. I want to, first of all, you talked about the MDGs and all that, and Khan Academy came into the scene. Then that you had some sort of an aha moment. What is the single most influential event or person, right, that kind of triggered this vision for Kibo? Like, was there someone? I know you mentioned Khan Academy, but was there a person or an event that really kind of got you on this path?
Sure. I think I don't know that there was one single person or event. I think for me, it was a small series of things that added together. So Khan Academy, and just seeing like, oh, look how much impact one person teaching on the internet can have. That was one. Another thing that happened is that I remember when MIT, university in Massachusetts, like very well known for math and science, they started putting their university materials online in 2006. Now, remember that this was like before Coursera, before Udacity, before Udemy, like
Yeah,
none of these things
exactly.
existed. So again, that for me was like, oh, so that means if this is online, anybody who has the internet can get it, right? So it was adding those things up when I just started to see more and more, if learning is key to opportunity, and I truly believe that, the way I'm going to help people get more opportunity is by helping them get like the education to change their own lives. Yes, I could go study economics and like write these papers about, not to, I don't want to offend anyone who's watching who's an economist, but for me, the opportunity to like just give people the knowledge to change their own lives seemed much more salient. So I would say it was the events, to go back to your question, it wasn't a single event, but it was watching slowly as we started to see really interesting examples of the internet being used for learning.
Mm. And I think it's also noteworthy to probably maybe give us a bit of the contrast you kind of found at the time between how you are being educated in Nigeria and the kind of new experiences that you're having in the United States. So like you mentioned, you got to the US and you realized, okay, look, I had classmates who were smarter. Like, on what basis did you kind of do that contrast, comparing and contrasting between the how you're being educated in Nigeria and in the US? Are there any vast differences and similarities?
Sure. I think, when I say I had classmates who were smarter or just as smart, what I noticed is, at least for me, I got a really strong basic education in Nigeria, right? So my basic mathematics education was really strong. My basic
Mm.
English and writing education was really strong. And sometimes, it's easy for us to look at Africa and to just look at everything that's wrong. There are some things that are right. And I think in our education system, we've made a ton of, not everybody, obviously, it's still very much dependent on your income. But we, for the most part, have really strong basic primary and secondary education. The things that were a contrast, though, and I think the things that maybe sometimes the West does better are going beyond the kind of foundation, and more education in critical thinking, more education in communication, the things that really make you like able to do what you're doing, Prince, right? Like interview
Yeah.
people, network. Those are some of the experiences that I saw much more of in America, in terms of like, you have a brain. You shouldn't just be like seen and not
Yeah.
heard. And I think that system encouraged a lot more of that, which is really, really positive.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that you mentioned, or you actually concur with the idea that not everything is wrong with our education in Africa. I had a conversation recently with some people, and I made them understand that this is the situation, that yes, a lot of things are wrong, but not everything is completely worthless. I had all my education, academic education in Ghana, nowhere else, from my first degree to my master's. And I'm doing this and many other things partly based on how the educational system kind of trained me. So there are some positives, and I
Yeah.
truly like the fact that, yeah, you mentioned
And
this.
I think maybe if anything, you and I probably see this in Nigeria, you see it in Ghana, that maybe the biggest thing sometimes is the difference between the top and the bottom, right? So I think there are a lot of people who have who just don't have access to much, and that's maybe our challenge. The other thing is, and this goes back to access, is having more access, especially to technology and enrichment, right? So when we got to the United States, I got to use like computers as part of my learning for the first time. You could learn, like, it was very early in the days of the internet, but a program called Dreamweaver where you could learn like little things
Oh,
about building a
yes,
website.
I
So
remember.
hey, shout out to Dreamweaver, got so many of us
Yeah.
started on the path. So yeah, so those are the things where, sometimes I'll meet young people today and they're super sharp, like amazing math, amazing English, but they don't have access to computers, right? And so they're just like, you can't learn to code if you don't have the basic tools necessary. So I think that's more where our challenges
Yeah.
lie, not in the capacity or ability or fundamentals.
Yes, yes. And thinking about access, traditionally we've had the brick and mortar kind of educational system or model, where there is a physical space and there is some form of a congregation of students and the instructor. But with the proliferation of technological tools, we kind of are more into the click and mortar. So, I mean, you can be a student in Ghana or Nigeria, and your instructor is somewhere in the United States or in Europe, and the experience is equally, let's say, effective. And I think this is what Kibo is trying to do. So, from your point of view, how important is technology's role in delivering effective education, for not just for Africans, but in general?
Yeah, I think technology, the way I think about it is that technology is really has the ability to augment humans, right? So I'm not somebody who believes that we're going to leave children or young people in front of a computer and walk away and they're going to learn. Like that just doesn't happen, right? Like they're
Nope,
going to
nope.
watch YouTube, and although you can learn a
Yeah,
lot on YouTube. So, but the point is that you still need expert guidance and you need facilitation. What technology can do that I think is really special, though, is help those guides go further and do more, right? So if you're in a place where just in your physical region, you just don't have access to a machine learning expert, you can connect with a machine learning expert with technology, right? Or it might allow your teacher, say you're in primary school, to get like the latest resources and learning science to teach a particular concept. So to me, I think the role of technology and where technology really shines is enabling humans to do more and giving the humans superpowers.
I love that because I think sometimes I've had conversations where I see technology's role just as you do, more like the intermediation that helps us to, augment or go beyond our human capability. Look at us right now, completely different geographic locations, and technology is the intermediary through which we are having this conversation. And when I think about personally, when I think about Kibo, I read a bit about your vision and all that. What were some of the pain points for you that really, let's say, caused you and a co-founder to say, look, we need to find a solution and we need to start an organization to address this? What were the key pain points that that triggered the establishment of Kibo?
Yeah, I love that question. I think there were a few pain points and then some opportunities as well. And sometimes like the painful things and the opportunities are one and they're one and the same, right? It's like I'm an optimist, so I look at like the pain points as opportunities to do better, which you kind of have to do if you're going to start a company, I think. So I guess some of the pain points. One is just the huge unemployment rate that we have across the continent right now, right? So even among people who graduate from university, we see anything from like 20 to 40% unemployment or underemployment. And so everywhere on the African continent, we have the most young people. There's so many young people. And people to me are like, that's human resource. That's amazing. Like people are a blessing. So it's very exciting that we have young people. But we don't have great work for them locally, right? So where are they going to get work? Where are they going to earn income to move us forward? They're going to do it on the internet. And if you look at what is being demanded, like what are companies hiring for remotely, those are really high-tech jobs, and jobs right now that I don't think our traditional institutions are preparing students for. I just talked to a young man this morning, actually, who's was interviewing for Kibo, and he was telling me about his current degree, and it's just highly, highly theoretical, right? It's like you're learning electrical engineering and you're doing everything on the board. I talk to people who are studying computer science at African universities, and it's all being written on the board. So even when they get that piece of paper, that degree or that certificate, they're not actually prepared to do anything, right? So that's a huge pain point, is like we just have universities that are teaching the same way they've taught for decades and are not preparing our young people for the world of work, right? And you have jobs that are being unfilled. When you talk to African entrepreneurs, right, like the tech sector is exploding on our continent. Like last year, over $4 billion in like venture capital went into Africa, which is amazing. But and I have a few friends who are startup founders. The number one challenge that they all have is finding good talent, right? So then they end up hiring software developers in India and Eastern Europe. And it's like, it frustrates me, right? Where wait a minute, this Nigerian company, I look around and there are all these young Nigerians who could use a work. And yet this Nigerian company has good money, like to pay, but cannot find that talent. And, I read this article, or there was a couple articles that were written in the last few months. Microsoft opened an office in Kenya, right? And so then the Kenyan companies are like complaining because all of their engineers have gone to Microsoft, right? And like, but that's not the problem isn't that Microsoft opened that office. Like good for those engineers who now work at Microsoft. The problem is that there are millions of young Kenyans who don't have the skills to then go work at the startups, right? So that's, I think, that's one of the really big pain points that led to just being like, we have to do it better. We have to do better. We need other solutions.
I mean, I think maybe 2-3 years ago, I also have this technology startup, and like it's been tough just getting talent with the level of proficiency and skill to deliver. So I remember we interviewed some computer science students and people who were even like teaching assistants to be like, these were the top of their class, and they had no idea how to deliver on projects. So, I mean, these pain points I think, are quite ubiquitous across the continent. And what you are trying to do for me is critical. It's almost like we are sitting on a time bomb, because like you mentioned earlier, we have a youthful population who are just looking for something to do. And if we don't preoccupy them with the skill sets that are relevant, then they'll find themselves in vices, and other things. So it's crucial. You made an important point regarding these talents being ready for the job market. I came across this, I call it like a tripartite kind of model of looking at developing tech talents. So the first one is education, the second one is experience, and the third one is exposure. So in order to build the tech talents that we are all ascribing to, yes, we need to educate them, young people, but also we need to give them the exposure, through internships or mentorship and so forth. And then also we need experience. And I've had instances where I've had people who are well educated with a master's degree and all that, but have no exposure. It means that they have not dealt with a certain scale of projects or timelines. They are not able to thrive under pressure and so forth. How does Kibo address or net these three key components together for a student who goes through your educational system, to come out as, kind of someone who has all these three?
Yeah, I love this question, Prince, because it's so critical to how we designed the degree. So we offer, as you know, it's a bachelor's degree in computer science, a 3-year degree that's designed to be very applied. And so the nice thing about getting to start from scratch is you can ask yourself exactly, what does it mean to be a modern computer scientist? And when we talk about Kibo, we always say that we're trying to do two things. One is give you the skills to succeed and the network to succeed. And I think those three things, like education, experience, exposure, all tie in, right? So on the education front, we really give you both like practical modern skills, like you're learning web development, you're learning data science, you're learning machine learning, things that like you can put to work right away. But we also still do the computer science fundamentals, right? So there are a lot of boot camps, short courses where you can learn to build a web page. That's really nice, but that's not going to get you world-class jobs. I worked at Google for a long time. A lot of our mentors work at top tech companies. So we want to make sure that you have the like deep CS fundamentals to do well at a high level. So maybe that's the education. The second part, right, is to your point, the experience. And this is something I'm super excited about, which is part of our degree program requires students to do industry experience. So at the end of your first year, at the end of your second year, you have to go on internship or you have to complete an industry challenge. And you'll get course credit for it. So it's not just like, hey, Prince, would you like to do industry experience? Like you're not getting your degree if you don't do it. And that's because it's really critical, right? Exactly. It's like, there's so much, I think back to my own education. It's like the real learning happened when you hit that internship, right? Learning like, oh, this is how that book stuff really translates. It's like we can give you even class projects, and our learning is very project-based. It's just very different to like build a project in school and you're building like a web app. It's really different to then go to a giant company that's been building it for 10 years and then encounter the challenges of, this, all of the old things that you then as this new engineer have to like build on top of. So that's how we build the experience in. And then that also gives exposure, right? It gives them exposure to different companies. We also match, we're going to match everybody who comes in with a mentor that's in industry. So that gives you a really strong additional exposure. That's somebody who can tell you, so here's what happens at my job at Instagram, or this is what happens at my job at Amazon. And then they can also be your advocates, right? Because everybody like, you know, I hate to break it to you, but so many jobs are gotten not just by applying, but by having
Hmm.
internal advocates and people who are in your
Yes.
network, right? Who are going to say, okay, just like take a second look at Okwa's resume, right? She may not check all the boxes, but I know her. She's enthusiastic. She's this, she's that. So we think it's really critical to build the skills and the fundamentals of computer science, get that internship experience, and then have those mentors who will really help you and go to bat for you.
Mm. I love this. I mean, this for me tells me that you put a lot of work and thinking into Kibo, because for me these three things are crucial. I remember when I first started my social entrepreneurship journey, that was I think my sophomore year when I registered my first company. And one thing that I kind of gleaned from that experience was that my team and I, we were kind of organizing at the time. We're organizing workshops and conferences for students, teaching them how to do personal branding, how to prepare their CVs, and so forth. Now, in one of the events that we organized, we were supposed to get some sponsorship, corporate sponsorship from a company. I wouldn't mention the name. The interesting thing is, at the time we were students, we did not have enough resources. So this company promised us that we're going to give us some sponsorship, and they gave us a date and time to come to their office. And I schooled in a city called Kumasi, which is the second largest city in Ghana. And so my co-founder at the time, um, I mean, at the time we're so broke. So he had enough money to get to the office of the company. And the idea was that if he got the money, then he kind of uses part of the money for transport back to campus. Unfortunately, when he got there,
No, I know where this is going. I
it
can
was
tell
a
where this is
no-show.
going. Oh no.
Yeah, it was a no-show. They came up with an excuse, and the courtesy of even calling us to inform us so we don't even embark on the journey was not there. You know, so my co-founder gets there and they said, "Oh, we are sorry." They gave some excuse, so he had to walk, and it's a distance. My co-founder walked, and it started drizzling midway when he was walking back to campus. He walked from town, like this is like, even with the car, it's about 45 minutes drive. So he walked, yeah. And the reason why I'm saying this story is has got to do with the exposure bit. Like when you have exposure, you understand what it means to have a manager who probably doesn't like you, but you still have to deliver. When you're in the classroom, you're in a very pristine environment, controlled environment. You're paying your fees, so you have a sense of entitlement. But when you get to work, they are paying you. So the company usually have a sense of entitlement. So I'm happy that you are doing the kind of a mix between the internship and the fact that the internship is mandatory and it goes towards your credit. I love that model. And I wish, we had that, whilst we were in school back in the day. But yeah, I love that. I love that. Those of you watching, so this is People Who Inspire. We are talking about breaking barriers in education in Africa, and we are specifically looking at the journey of Kibo. And we have seen so far, like for me personally, I'm sold. Ope, can you tell us, like, so someone is watching right now, he or she is thinking, how do I get into the Kibo School of Technology? What do you look out for? So two things. One, the person watching says that, how do I get in, right? And you as the recruiter, in this case, you're looking at certain, let's say, attributes of a candidate, right? So can you address both ends? How does one get in, and what do you look out for in a candidate, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of how you get in, applications are open right now. So, this is a great time to be asking that question. You can go to kibo.school, as Prince is showing on the screen there, to start your application. And the application will ask you some information about yourself and then ask you to complete two challenges. And the challenges are really, they're challenging. but they also give you an opportunity. For sure, they're challenging, but they give you an opportunity to reflect on why do you want to do this? Like, what are your values? How does learning at Kibo, where do you want to go, and how might this education help you get there? And then, they also they help us to kind of get a sense of who you are and why this might make sense for you. And then in terms of what we're looking for, listen, Prince, so much of it is about mindset, right? Are you somebody who is really determined and willing to work in a self-regulated manner, right? So the learning at Kibo, you'll be doing a lot of expected to do a lot of learning on your own and in community, but nobody's going to come and drag you to your laptop every morning, turn it on,
Yeah.
so you've got to you just have to have a bit of that ability to self-regulate, drive, a real reason that you want it. That's why we ask those questions in the challenge. So that's one thing we're looking for. It's just does this person have the right mindset? The second mindset that really matters to us is collaboration. We say all the time that we're better together. And so our learning at Kibo, it's not just go watch some videos and turn in your projects. There's a lot of group work. That you have to attend class and work with other people. And in the classes that we've done, we have these 3 classes that we do that are much shorter. I don't know what you were like in school, but I used to be one of those people who liked to do all the work by herself, just because I wanted to get it done fast. Were you like that, or did you like to work with other people?
I was a bit like you. So yeah, very solo minded. I just want to do everything solo.
You want to do it by yourself. And that's it's funny because I think you think, oh, let me just get it done. But that's not how the real world works, right? I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, at Google, the hardest thing wasn't the technical challenges that we were solving. It was people. You don't build anything by yourself. So you have to be able to impact people, to influence them, to move them in the same direction. And that's why collaboration is built into the degree. It's this is how you work. You have to learn how to do it. So we're looking for evidence that you're a collaborative person. And then just entrepreneurial, right? Because you're joining a new school program. You're really going to help build it up. So we kind of think about our first group of students as our co-founders, right? So we kind of have to have that spirit of entrepreneurial, I want to try something new. I want to help build this institution.
And I heard from one of from one of my friends, Salom, that there was this opportunity for people who could apply before the 1st of August for some scholarship. Could you maybe talk a bit about that?
Yeah,
I know the timeline might be short, but it's worth it.
It's definitely worth it. So as I was just saying, we're really thinking about this first class as being co-founders. So we got the opportunity to offer these founder scholarships. So 75% scholarship all 3 years of the program. We're guaranteeing that for any, I know it's a really great deal, and we're really excited because that means that money isn't going to be a barrier to getting amazing students this. So we're excited to just, if you're smart and you are a go-getter, you can do it. So it's guaranteed for everybody who applies by August 1st, which is coming up very soon. However, it probably will extend beyond then because we have a certain scholarship pool. So we're going to continue to be able to offer it. So try to do it by August 1st if you can, but if not, don't worry. You might still be eligible for that scholarship and other ones as well. So just
that's
get to work and get to applying. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. For those of you watching who probably are thinking of applying, please try as much as possible. You have today and tomorrow. Get onto your laptop, get onto the website as is displayed on the screen. 75% scholarship for me is, you should give it a shot for sure.
Prince, I feel like you're gonna go and start your application right after the interview.
I'm so much tempted. I'm I need to
let's cut this interview short. I have to go start my application.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. I think again, if I consider how much thought has gone into this, it's really awesome. I'm looking, for example, currently I'm looking at if if I go through, for example, Kibo and I graduate, is there some form of like a conduit to the industry? Are there, let's say, opportunities that Kibo as an organization can help me to either land a job, or how is it like to ensure that the pipeline of students that come through at least are well placed, or they can start their own companies, or whatever it is? What happens post graduation?
Yeah, so that's why I think the really important thing to keep in mind, not just in computer science, but honestly any industry, is you can't wait until post graduation to start thinking about a job, right? That's why those internships matter. That's why the industry experience matter. That's why building your network while you're still learning matters. So that's exactly it, right? It's like we really believe that after getting a few opportunities to work at companies, meeting lots of professionals, we have a career services office who will help you with your application, etc. But honestly, I don't even think most people will need their services because if you've already been in industry, those guys are going to be really eager to rehire you. My first job out of university was at a place where I'd interned. So many.
Oh, wow.
When I was at Google, we had lots of interns every summer, and the ones who were great, we would invite them to come back and work full time. So that's why I think we built so much of that stuff into it as preparation for what happens when you graduate.
I like that. So I always like to ask this question with all my guests, because there is a tendency for people to think that people like yourself are always succeeding, as though there are no points of failure, or sometimes you feel that you failed at something. Is there any experience of failure at some point? I know it's quite tangential to the discussion, but have you ever felt that you have failed at something, and how did you overcome that feeling?
Yeah, this is such an important question, and something that I think cannot be said enough, that failure is part of the journey. If you're afraid to fail, you will never do anything. And I have failed so many times. I think I felt like a failure in the last day. So let's just get that straight, that you're going to have a lot of failures, right? And I think so. Kibo's not the first time that I've tried to launch a company. In fact,
oh, really?
My very first attempt was back in, I think, 2011. I won a competition, got a grant, and I tried to build an online math learning platform. So I built the MVP, wrote all the code myself, and it completely flopped. And I remember the end of that year that I was working on it, I just spent all of my money. I literally had to borrow money from one of my friends to cover the rent as I was looking for a job at the end of that experience. And it just it felt awful. I can't but 10 years later, there are a couple of really important things I learned. One is I learned the importance of building a team, right? There are many reasons that company failed, but one of the big ones is I was trying to do it all by myself. I'm going to be the developer, and I'm going to be the marketer. And it's okay, that's crazy. That's not going to work. Right?
No.
So finding a team is really, really critical, but somebody can say that, but until you've experienced it, then you really know. And then I think the other thing that failure taught me, and failures teach you all the time, is that you are stronger or more resilient than you think. I didn't die. Right? So that is you're okay, it felt terrible. I ran out of money. I was embarrassed. Maybe, I had to tell people that this thing I was excited about is not going to work anymore. So none of that was joyful, but I survived, and I went on to do things that I couldn't even believe after. So I think learning to kind of, I wouldn't even say embrace failure, because it's hard to embrace something that feels bad, but not to be afraid of failure,
I like that. And thanks for sharing, because I think for most of the discussions that I've had, most of my guests so far always had one failure story or another. And thanks for at least opening up to share that with us. it's crucial that we understand that failure is part of the journey, and learning to kind of move on after such an episode is is also part of the
Sure.
learning process. Yeah. I would go now to some of the comments, and if there are any questions as well, I'll pull them on the screen. So let's look at, I think Ed Ohene has a question. Okay, so first let's look at some of the comments. This from YouTube, from Wanjiku. Said, I'm so inspired by Ope. This is the first time I've learned more about her and the origin of Kibo School. Thank you, Prince, for having her.
Thank
So
you. I appreciate that.
this is awesome. We also have Ed Edohene. Also says he has a question. Does Kibo assist to connect their students with the industry for these internships?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have several partners already lined up. Get Start, which is a great developer community that has projects from companies all over the world. The Baya, we have individual startups signed up. So yes, we definitely will be doing a lot of work to help make sure that our students have great companies to work at.
Awesome. We have also, Ed also sent another one. He said industry training is part of the coursework back in our universities as a requirement. However, the problem is monitoring. So I think that maybe, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, right? So it's one thing to say you have to do industry. It's another thing to make sure people are both doing it and complying, but also doing things that matter, right? Like we don't want our students to go to some company and just like get people's tea or coffee, right? Like, so you have to be doing like actual software development and actual computer science work, which is why we're spending a lot of time like vetting and finding these partners. Students, as they go through their industry experience, will also be, because they're getting credit for it, it will be a class officially. So weekly, they'll be submitting reflections, like what are they doing? What are they learning? So there will be someone, like a faculty member on the Kibo team, keeping tabs and ensuring that these experiences are meaningful for students. They're not just, it's just not like an industry experience in name alone.
Yes, I remember some of the internship stories I've heard back at home, where most of the interns were just like errand boys and errand girls running errands to buy lunch and stuff.
Yes, absolutely not. So definitely we will make sure that they have a real software development project that you will be working on. And then the internship manager actually has to evaluate you at the end too and tell us like what you worked on and what you did. So there's a lot of safeguards to avoid.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me. So Edmond says he's watching from Accra. Okay, thank you. We also have Micheline, love Ghana, my second home. Okay, so she's watching from LinkedIn, and awesome discussion also. I think this was from Salom. He was having some audio issues, but I think it's solved now. So, so I think these are the comments that have come in so far. Now, just to, let's say, wrap up, I have one major question that I've thought about, and this is in relation to collaboration. So I see the vision that Kibo has to be so significant that it will require some collaboration for this to be realized. By collaboration, I mean Kibo collaborating with other institutions or hubs or and such organizations. Do you share the same sentiment, and do you have some collaborations that you would want to mention?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're doing is a movement, and it is a movement that, like, the movement to upskill Africans and help us really live up to our full potential is bigger than any single individual or any organization, right? So there's no way Kibo alone is going to solve this problem. So we really need to collaborate with others. Some of the people that we've been excited to collaborate with so far include other like secondary schools and advocacy organizations. So we offer a program called Try Kibo. They're 5-week free Python classes, web development classes. And so we've had some really great partners, Blossom Academy in Ghana,
Oh yeah, Blossom Academy. Yeah, I know.
Nigeria, that have sent students to this program. So if anybody's
Wow.
watching, you are at a secondary school or an advocacy organization, get in touch because we need to upskill a lot more people just to even be prepared to study CS in university, right? And so we want to partner with people who just are thinking about how do we get, like my dream, Prince, is I'll just put this out there, and then so we can make it happen. I would love to have every like secondary school student like in West Africa take a programming class. Just one.
Wow.
It can be a month long, but just to get that exposure, right? Because the problem is, ask like, what did you want to be when you grew up? What did you want to be when you were growing up, or what did people think?
For me, they wanted me to become a medical doctor.
Or maybe an engineer. It's like doctor, engineer, right? It's like
exactly.
Those are the only things, right? And I'm just like, there's so many really interesting things you can do with other technical skills, right? It's not just being a programmer. You could be a product manager. You could be a data scientist. You could be an entrepreneur. You can go into like biotechnology if you like. So I really, I would love to figure out partnerships that help us just expose people at a younger and younger age to these skills. So those are some of the partnerships we're really most excited about right now. And then of course, forgive me to say one more thing, which is hubs and resources, because there are still a lot of people, we're doing the application and people will send us a WhatsApp and say, I don't have a laptop to do my application, or, data is bad or electricity is bad. So we really do want to partner with places that will provide a place for students to come and do their learning.
Especially, yes, these co-working spaces and hubs. Yeah, I think we I mean, for those of you watching, this is very, let's say, pivotal in the success of the whole vision to kind of prepare our next generation. I've always been thinking about, like, when we talk about the skill sets that is required for the next generation, it's an issue from my point of view. It's an issue of visionary leaders, like yourself, people who see beyond the now. Because, ordinarily you think that, now I just need a job, that pays me monthly. But when you're thinking about the next generation, these are people whose society or whose economies are not even yet defined. Like, we don't even know how the next 20 years is going to look like, but we can do something now to prepare, the younger generation. I think about maybe a decade ago, 10 years ago, I came across a video by and I'll pick your thoughts on this. There's this video series called Thinker videos on YouTube. And so back in the day, this is more than 10 years ago, I came across two young prodigies. One was called Tanishq Abraham, who at the age of 9 was in college, was studying, I think, astrophysics. And then I think Jacob Barnett, who also at the time he was 14 years, and he was a visiting professor and all that. And I was thinking, like, what, like, in my mind, these societies are preparing their next generation. And I was thinking, how do we even identify prodigies in Africa? Like, we don't even see them, right? There's no institution that identifies young prodigies, right? And so for me, I see what you're doing as, it's a movement. Like that's the best way to describe it. And what do you think, right, about, so let's say someone enrolls in Kibo and you've identified that this person is exceptional, like, is there any, let's say, special program, maybe? Just putting this out there, because I've seen some prodigies I attended secondary school with. but there was no, I mean, they were studying like the rest of us, but at a point it becomes boring for them because they're either far ahead or like, like the syllabus is too easy for them, right? So do you have any, let's say, like a system in place to identify like a student who enrolls and you realize this person is exceptional and probably we need to pay more attention?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in general, this is from like a learning design perspective. We always say that we don't want our students to be in their comfort zone and we don't want them to be in their panic zone. We want them to be in their learning zone. So we ask students a lot, like, listen, if you're in your comfort zone and this is too easy, you need to tell us because we can always challenge you more.
Okay. I
One of
love
the
that.
benefits, yeah, and I think the benefits also of project-based learning is it's not, answer these questions and you're done, right? So you and I might both be tasked to like build a web app. And if you're way ahead of me, you can add more, right? Like you can go beyond because it's a project. So it's actually quite open-ended. So I think that helps a lot too for students who might be far ahead. And then I think philosophically, I think it's really important to think about the prodigies, but I'm also really interested in thinking about just like everyone else, and not just designing or building for prodigies, because I think that we just have many more smart people who can operate. Like they don't have to be, they don't have to be professors at 14 to be extremely excellent. So I feel like what we need to do is just like bring up the middle and provide opportunities for there to be many, many more like super successful people. And they don't have to be geniuses.
I love that. I love that. So it's open. So for those of you watching, we are wrapping up. I would put again on the screen how to get into the Kibo School of Technology. You can see the website on the screen currently. And again, for those of you who are interested in the 75% scholarship for getting into Kibo, I mean, again, everything is on the screen. Please try to apply before the 1st of August. I think Ope mentioned that there's a likelihood of an extension, but just to be on the safer side, try to apply between today and tomorrow. Just spend some time to finish your application, a strong one, of course, and hopefully you get this wonderful scholarship. So do you have any last words to wrap up today's session?
Well, it's been really a fun conversation and just enjoyed talking to you more about the work that we're doing. And yeah, I think that the only thing I would say is that each of us, like you said in the beginning, this is about the journey. Each of us is on a learning journey. So I encourage everyone to like think about that, like think about how as a learner yourself, you can do more and take advantage of like the incredible resources that exist online.
Thank you very much, Ope, for being part of the PWI series. And for those of you who joined and those of you who kind of sent in your questions and your comments, I truly appreciate being part of today's discussion. So I would say thank you very much. And we'll meet again next week for another episode of People Who Inspire. Thank you very much. So Ope, please stay behind and then I'll catch you after we go offline. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.